from a freshly sanitized studio, it's the Golf Bag Live. Today's guest, sports photojournalist Rob Tringali. And now, America's favorite caddy daddy, it's Dave West.
All right, my first guest today has seemingly been on the front row of every major sporting event in the last 30 years. From wide right to Tiger Slam to the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl. I'm super thrilled to say hello to sports photojournalist Rob Tringali. Rob, what's up?
Hey, David, how are you? How's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah. I'm great. Well,
we're going to get to
so great.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, and I want to talk about all the stuff that you've shot because your photographs are just truly amazing, and you have some stuff that we're probably not going to get to that is people have seen on covers of magazines and posters and some great stuff. But let's start first with you. You're a New Yorker, right?
I am, yeah, born and raised.
So you grew up in Staten Island. Now, I used to live in New York. Not many people have been to the borough of Staten Island. What was it like growing up there?
The forgotten borough. It was great growing up. We had, it wasn't that many people. So I lived on a dead end street, so we could play wiffle ball and stickball and whatever season, touch football, whatever it was. So it was great. It was nothing but people that you knew, obviously other family, cousins, whatnot. So neighbors. So it was a cool place to grow up. Obviously it got overcrowded and I moved out, but growing up, it was definitely a fun time to grow up there as a kid.
Oh, I bet. Have you always been like a sports guy?
Yeah, no, I got the bug when I was, 5-6 years old, probably. I think Chris Chambliss' home run, 76 against the Royals. I remember as a kid, my parents were divorced, so I was with my stepdad, and I ended up watching that game when I was maybe 6-7 years old, whatever it was. And once I saw the fans jump on the field and went crazy, yeah, I think from that point on, and then my dad, was a photographer and he had a sports photo agency. So I was lucky enough as a kid. I went to World Series games and Super Bowls as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old. So but I had a bug. I watched everything. I watched golf tournaments, tennis tournaments. It didn't matter what, if there was somebody, if people were moving, if there was some competition on TV, I was hooked, and I played a little myself, but I was a huge sports fan, and crazy sports fan.
Now, your dad was a photographer, and you had talked about how you had told me once before that your dad had a sports photo agency. Now, this was the 70s, right? So this was before
mid 70s.
The mainstream Gettys and those kinds of things were popular, right?
Yeah, there was nothing. Yeah, there was no such thing as those back then. So it was,
okay.
It was, it was one of the first, photo agencies of any kind. I'm assuming, because so him and his partner opened this agency up back in the 70s, and they serviced all these sports clients that they had, whether it's newspapers, with magazines, and anything else that was going on in the world at that point. So yeah, I was around it as a kid. I remember going into the office, whether it was a summer or days that I had off, and I would just sit there on a light table, and they would just give me a bunch of slide sheets, and I would just look through old chromes of the Brooklyn Dodgers and, obviously Yankee stuff. I mean, they had, Muhammad Ali. I mean, they had all these, amazing chromes. And I'm assuming back then that's where I got the bug to become a photographer, even though it probably took me a long time to actually get the photography bug. It was more, I had the sports bug, and it was, again, it was something that was cool to be part of. And
so when you decided, hey, I want to do this and I want to be a photographer, why sports and why not fashion or move to Hollywood or anything else? And what, how did you get started? What was your first gig?
Yeah, like I said, I graduated. I mean, like probably any kid, I wanted to play center field for the Yankees or something like that. And when you don't make your high school baseball team when you're a junior, it's like you just that dream
makes it difficult.
Yeah, it makes it hard. So you start to all right. But I knew I wanted to be around sports somehow. And I assisted one of my dad's photographers. I went to a game down in D.C. at RFK Stadium. We flew down, day to game. Once I got into the field, I was hooked. I was like, I was like 16 years old, and I was like, I have to, I got to figure out how to, become a photographer to actually. This is my pathway into like big events, big sporting events, and like I said, I had cameras growing up. My dad gave me cameras, so I just had just wasn't in me yet. But at 16, I said, all right, I have to start to like figure out to become a photographer. This is the way my pathway into, going to these cool events. And so as far as first event, so I probably shot some Met games when I was like 17, 18. And probably when I graduated high school, I went full on. I was like, I'm just going to just, go for it. So I think one of the big events, that was 1988. It was the Notre Dame, Miami, the Catholics versus the Convicts in Notre Dame. And, just being out there in South Bend, and I was like, and then Notre Dame wins, and in the last second, I think Jimmy Johnson went for 2 to try to win the game. He was down by a point, and they ended up an incomplete pass. And the crowd goes crazy. They're jumping over my head, and I was just like, holy shit, this is it. This is what I need to do for the rest of my life. And I was like on that path, but it was really this is it was one of the cool college football games of all time. It's like, it was, it was,
you're like 16, 17 years old doing this?
No, at that point I was like 18. I was 18. Yeah. I was probably,
It's still pretty young.
I was young. I was green as can be. I was like, I had no idea how to, I couldn't even rent cars back then. So I would go to an airport and have to hop on a bus to
I'm going to the college game.
They go to South Bend, where's all my equipment. When I think back to those days, it's like every once in a while you got lucky, you hooked up with somebody, and you could drive with them. So, but it was a fun time
Now back then, and I'm not aging you because I don't want to age me.
Yeah.
But back then, cameras were film. It was harder to focus, and you winding film, and there's a lot that goes into it. And you got these guys coming at you while you're trying to learn such a hard thing to do. Talk about the film part of it way before anything.
It was
everything's automatic.
God. It was manual focus and film, and every once in a while you get a cold day in Green Bay where it's 5 degrees and you can't feel your fingertips and you can't wear gloves because you can't, rewind the film. So it was. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was really bad at it when I first started. I wasn't very good, and it was hard. I mean, it was. I look at the equipment now and how easy it is to kind of autofocus and whatnot. But I mean, to shoot guys like Bo Jackson running full tilt at you, manual focus. I mean, it was an art form, and you only had you had film, and exposures would be changing constantly, and you had to run through 40, 50 rolls of film a game. It was you saw the best guys at every big event. You always saw the top 10 guys from around the nation that would always converge on it, because it was there was only so many guys that can do it and do it well and do it consistently. And when I started, it was that was my drive. It was how do I get to the point where I'm as good as those guys? And it's like one of those things. It took time and practice. I would go to high school games and try to practice my manual focus, and local little league games, and just to keep practicing. And over the time, 3, 4, 5 years later, you start to get the ability became a lot easier to to make it happen. But I'm jealous of guys now. That's a little easy as far as the.
It's a little easier. So I would think that's great that taking your own time and taking your as I've heard say doing the lonely work where you're out there by yourself and nobody sees that you're really working hard. You're shooting little league games and all that.
Just like anything, that's like playing golf or whatever. I would find a little high school football game and just say, hey, let me go practice a little bit, and that's what you did. If you wanted to be good at it, back then that's what you did to.
So you finally get the call to the Holy Grail shoot. Tell me about shooting your first Super Bowl.
Yeah, so my first Super Bowl was, it was probably maybe 1920. It was the Broncos and the Niners. And I think it was Super Bowl 24. I think you recall the score, I think. If I remember correctly.
55-10, Joe Montana beat John.
Yes, exactly. So, I shot a handful. I think I shot a handful of games that year. And then one of my dad's clients was a Newsweek magazine, and they had another credential that year to the Super Bowl. Their main guy, and I was like, I'll go. And I remember going down there and sleeping in a room with 3 other photographers in some hotel in New Orleans. And the second you walk on the field, you just it was cool. It was something I always remember. The game wasn't very good, but the memory is awesome.
It's good if you're a Niners fan.
Yeah, exactly. As a photographer, just trying to make cool pictures and being I remember that.
How old are you?
After that game was, I'm 20 maybe at that time. I don't know. The game's in January. I was born. I can't remember if I was 19 to 20. Probably one of those.
That's
Can't do
crazy.
a quick math. I'm probably, but yeah.
You're probably the youngest guy there, youngest photographer.
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I don't remember, but
so did that start a career for you? Did that like launch and like you're in the game?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were doing more like stock photography, so I don't know, guys do it now, but back then it was even more prevalent where, I was my own boss for the most part. Like I said, my dad had the agency, but as a photographer, you would go out and you would, pay for your expenses, and you would finance the film and the processing and the airline tickets and a hotel, and the object was you just found games and found the marketable players like a Bo Jackson, a Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders, and baseball, the Griffeys and the whoever, and you would just go and just shoot for a base. You would have clients like baseball card companies, poster companies, magazines, right, whatnot. And as an agency, you would split it with the agency, but that was like the business model. So it was an easy, I didn't have to get hired by anybody. So I can just as long as I was getting credentials and getting access to the games, as long as I could finance myself going to them, that's what we did. And that was my life for the first, 7-8 years as a photographer. So it was basically, baseball schedule would come out, the college football pro schedule would come out. And I would see Michigan's playing on a Saturday, and then the Bears are playing on a Sunday, or USC's playing on a Saturday, and then the Raiders are playing on a Sunday. You would just make your schedule, and it was fun. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It was it was a small group of guys that would travel to all these big games, and you fly into all these cool cities and eat in good restaurants, and I mean, it was lucrative. It was a good, there weren't that many people doing it, so if you were good at it, I mean, it was a fun business to be part of back then. Yeah.
The trading card thing is interesting because I didn't really think about that. We had talked earlier, and I didn't really think about that. But somebody's got to shoot those pictures, and I think when you're a kid and you're looking at them, you think that they're just hey, it just happens. But somebody had to do it. Now, at some point, you transition to magazines. So how does this happen?
Well, I got bored. I got bored, and the industry was changing. Like a lot of these card companies that were big time and doing well were kind of starting to go out of business. Magazines were starting to go away. So we're talking about maybe mid 90s, 96, 97-ish. And so the business model was changing a little bit, but I think, if I think back, I was kind of looking at it as I was shooting, picture cards and very tight, vertical, isolated action. And I wanted to be, in my heart, when I grew up, when I started to get into photography, when I was maybe like I said, when I first started, the dream was to shoot for Sports Illustrated. And, but SI had their guys in New York. And that's when ESPN magazine was starting up around 97, 98. So, and I wanted to be a magazine photographer. I wanted to go to big, but I wanted to shoot stories, and I wanted to shoot big spreads. And I was kind of at the point, I was kind of getting over this vertical, baseball card looking picture. So yeah, I went hard at ESPN around, we did that. We helped them with their prototypes 97, and then 98, the issue, their first issue was published. And, I did a lot of that stuff for the last, I still, to the day, I mean, the magazine doesn't print anymore, but for that, whatever that time period of 20 years, I mean, I did, tons of big events and, working.
Do you remember your first magazine cover, either on ESPN or SI?
SI, I think it was my first cover. It was a Tony Gwynn cover in 97. And that was pretty cool. I mean, I was I remember it was Nate Gordon as a photo editor at SI, and you get this phone call because it was a stock picture. It wasn't like I worked a game or anything, and they picked it up. And I remember getting that phone call and, say, hey, Rob, congratulations. You got this, cover of SI this week. And it's that was a big deal. You go out.
Did you feel like a supermodel? You got the cover of SI?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. You go, you walk around to every every magazine place in the city, those newsstands on the corner, and you see you see your cover sitting there, and you buy. They send you a bunch of them, but I bought a bunch of them, and for that week it was the lab that I used to take my film to. They did it. They did a big thing, and it was cool. It was a cool. I mean, it was different then. So but it was fun. That was a fun couple of days.
That's cool. You've done so many large things. I'm going to test you here and see if you can remember how many things that you've done. So this is me quizzing you on your life. Okay, you ready? How many Super Bowls have you done?
It's 28.
How many World Series have you done?
I believe it's 25. I'm pretty sure it's 25.
How many Olympics have you done? Yeah.
I've done winter, summer.
Excuse me.
I'm going to say 6 maybe. Yeah.
That's a lot. And then golf, what major golf events have you shot?
I've done plenty of U.S. Opens, plenty of PGAs. I'm still waiting to do a Masters, which is the toughest credential in sports. So maybe one day that's like a bucket list thing. Yeah. But yeah, so tons of Opens and PGAs, and haven't done a British, haven't done the Masters. Is like, if I was to knock out the Masters one day, I might be able to call it a career.
That would be fantastic. Can I be your apprentice that day?
Yeah, I know. Everyone,
I'm really good at carrying digital cards. I don't have to.
Yeah, I know. Everybody. You know, I've had guys say that to me, and then after they assist me, they're like, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Because it's hard. You know.
No, it is hard. So I'm a baseball fan, and I can name probably the top 5 home runs that mean something to my favorite franchise, the St. Louis Cardinals. And probably number 1 or number 2 is David Freese hitting the game-winning home run in extra innings in Game 6 of the World Series in 2011. You were there.
I was there, yes. It was. And it was probably, I mean, maybe top 3 games I've ever been to. Yeah, I would say so. It was. There it is.
I mean, look at that picture right there. That is incredible.
Yeah, that was. I mean, if everybody remembers that game, the Cardinals were down to their last strike. I think in the 9th they were down 2 runs, and then Freese I think tripled. Right? If you remember, you're a Cardinal fan.
He tripled into right field over what? Nelson Cruz?
Over Cruz's head. Right? Cruz played it kind of badly, and then they tie it up. And then they go behind 2 runs in extra innings. I think Hamilton hit a 2-run homer, and then they tie it up again, and then Freese hits a solo home run. Right? Was that
solo home run? I mean, straight dead center field. Yeah.
It was a good. Yeah, I mean, that's actually I have a. I don't know if you want to get into it, but I do have a side story to that.
Go.
Yeah. So David Freese. I mean, so. If anybody remembers, there was a rain delay. David Freese, so I just started dating my wife at that point, and so I was gone for the month. Like I was away for the month, and she was like, "Holy shit!" Like I had no idea what you actually did. And then so all of a sudden, like she's sitting there, she's like the biggest Ranger fan because they're Rangers are up 3-2, and she's watching the game because she's like she's missing me and whatnot. And so all of a sudden, Texas, I mean Cardinals obviously tie it. And she's like, screw this, And then it goes to Game 7, and Cardinals win. And then the next day, I'm flying home. So she's ready to see me. She's like, I'll pick you up. We're flying to JFK. I'm flying home, and there's a blizzard. I mean, late October blizzard in New York that blankets JFK right before we touchdown landing. We get diverted to Boston. So I land in Boston. She's like, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Boston." She's like, "What?" She's like, "I closed the airport right before we landed." And so I got in the car. There was a couple of writers. My buddy Boog Shambi was a writer. He's a broadcaster for ESPN, and a couple other people, Joe Lemaire and Amy Nelson. So we ended up getting in the car, drove. I don't even know. I knew Amy, but I didn't know John and Joe. And I almost ended up killing these two on this blizzard ride through, I-95 down to New York. But it took us 8-9 hours. And, the whole time I was like, wow, I'm actually going to, because I was very cavalier about getting in the car. And hey, I've been to Winter Olympics and I can do this. But immediately I was like, this is not going to end up well. Moral of the story is 9 months later to the day, pretty much my son Luke was born. And so there was a reason to get home. There was a reason to get home that night, I guess. I've actually told that story to David Freese. I saw him. I told that him last year. He was at the Dodgers. We were in the dugout together, and I said, "Hey, man, I think you're the reason that my son was born." He's like, "I got to hear this," and so I ended up telling him a 5-minute story about he's probably responsible for my son being born. He got a kick out of it. So yeah,
David Freese doesn't hit that triple, and it does not go into extra innings. You don't get snowed in, and who knows?
I'm home. Who knows? You never know. You never know.
Who knows?
You never know. But yeah.
So I know that being a New Yorker, I know that you're a Yankees fan, and you were able to capture and really kind of, I'm sure, tell more of a story than just a snapshot of two of the greatest Yankees ever in their last seasons. So what was it like being there for those moments when Mariano Rivera retired and when Derek Jeter retired?
Yeah, I mean, it's those are two guys that were in my wheelhouse as far as where you shoot them from the beginning of their career to the end of their career, and I don't know if I could to do it now I'd probably have to shoot another 20 years, but it was kind of it was cool to be mid-20s and see Mariano come up, see Jeter come up, and then see them, and not only that, see them through this heyday of the New York, the heyday of the Yankees. They won 5 championships, and they were a dynasty, and it was all about them, and so yeah, you covered every big game, every playoff game, every World Series game for the most part, and to finally see it come to an end, especially so Mariano was first, and so I remember that night, and the Yankees were kind of going down, so that's. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was one of those moments where when you look back.
Look at that picture right there. He's waving to the crowd,
came out and that was right after I think when Jeter and Pettit took him out of the game, and then they kind of pushed him out of the dugout to give us little his curtain calls there, waving a hat, and it was one of those one of those moments where you honestly you're sitting there and you're like I'm shooting history. This is like a legendary player, legendary team, and legendary the new stadium is still legendary, but to be part of that night was again like a culmination of a career, and it was nice to kind of put a nice image to it, and then I don't know if you want to talk about the dugout shot.
Well, Jeter's like your Mickey. Yeah, Jeter's. Yeah, this bench shot right here.
So this is so I'm in my head as a photographer. I'm like, I want to go down these flight of stairs. Like, this is the end of the game. He's ready to go away. He's ready to go into the locker room. And so in my head, I was like, I'm just going to follow him down the stairs, and he's going to walk away from me, and I'm just want to get a shot of his 42 from behind with this empty dugout, and. All of a sudden, Mariano just sits down. He just sits down, and I'm the only person in the dugout. I'm sitting there. I'm like 2 feet from him, and it was probably the only time in my career where I felt like I was intruding on someone's space, and and he just has this glare, and he's just soaking in his last moments as a player, and I'm sitting there, and I'm consciously just didn't want to be intrusive, and I'm just clicking the shutter every 5-10 seconds, just so. Because I just wanted to give him his space, and every other photographer is on the railing looking in, and I mean it was eerie, and I can still remember that moment of just sitting there and just me and him in the dugout.
The look on his face.
Yeah, it was it was like a blank stare, and he just realized this is it, everything I worked for my whole life, everything it's over, and. I mean, you felt it. I mean, you felt it. Wow. You just almost could put yourself into into what he was thinking, and it was wow. This is what is that? What kind of feeling is that? It was pretty amazing, though.
Well, it's an incredible shot because you can see everything that you just described. You can totally see in his face. It's a super candid moment, and your sort of Mickey Mantle growing up. I mean, not as a kid, but in your career as Derek Jeter. So here you are 1 year later, the same thing happens.
Yeah. Same thing, again, same thing. And Jeter was, they both had great careers, but Jeter was Mr. New York and was, the guy. And this is a year later, another icon, hanging it up. And so, this is an image from his last game at Yankee Stadium, and him coming out of the dugout, start of the game. And I was noticing because I shot a ton of Jeter that year, and especially the last couple of months, and then maybe the last week or so, I started noticing that he was doing this little hop out of the dugout, but he would look over his shoulder. I don't know if he did that in his career, but it seemed like the last week he was doing that. And so I put a camera remote right on the floor there because they had us shooting from another position, but it's a shot I wanted, and I knew that if it all worked out, it was gonna work. It would be this, make this epic picture. And so this is fine for, remotely. And then when I saw the camera and I saw the frame, I was like, well, that's, the thank you, Derek, on the scoreboard. It was, it's one of those frames you make that,
Right.
it'll live beyond me. And, it's one of those cool things that happen in your career if you're lucky.
No, it's pretty amazing. And you got a great shot of him walking off and saying goodbye. It's amazing. The two greatest Yankees in there a year apart, and they're both so intertwined, and you were there for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great shot.
Yeah,
it's interesting, too, that you chose black and white for these because, I mean, the Yankees, when you see the Lou Gehrig and the Babe Ruths and all that, it's black and white, and this seems to fit that image.
It's, I got to ask that question, like, why did you decide to go black and white? It just – the Yankee uniform, the pinstripes, Yankee Stadium, it just looks right. It just I think when Gatorade did that, I think when Gatorade did the commercial with Jeter, the Frank Sinatra did it my way. I mean, I think they even filmed that in black and white. It just, there was something about it, and there's a classicness to it. Again, it just looks right. It just looks right.
Yeah, it does.
I see it in color. I see it in color, and it just feels right. It just feels more right in black and white. So
yeah, it does. All right, I want to talk a little bit about golf, and I want to talk about two of the greatest golfers probably ever, but definitely two that may not be where they are if they didn't have each other pushing them. First, it's not a great story, but it's an amazing story. So Phil Mickelson. Winged foot, the U.S. Open. Now, for those who don't know, he's gotten second place at the U.S. Open 6 times. This shot you have definitely had to be the most painful for him. He has a 2-shot lead with 1 to play, and then on the 18th hole, he hit a tent, he hit a tree, he went in the bunker, and I think all he had to do was bogey, I believe, and he double bogeyed, and he lost the U.S. Open. Exactly. Now, as you're seeing all this as a photographer, is this exciting or is this painful? But as a photographer, you're like, look at this image.
I was bummed actually because I wanted. It was, I followed Phil a lot, and I was a big Phil. I'm a Phil fan. I think people either like Phil or Tiger. And I was definitely more Phil. He was just the crowd and his personality and just like just the way the crowd would just be energetic, everything he did. And he was good. He was great with the crowd, and he knew how to play it. And, this particular day in Winged Foot, it was like, it was his. There was no reason that he should have not have won that. And, the crowd's pumped up, 18th hole. He's cruising almost. And, I'm saying, in my head, I was like, wow, this is, he's going to go crazy when he puts in the winning putt on 18. He's just, and as a photographer, that's kind of what you're looking for, that elation. I mean, it's good to get the dejection stuff is good, but, Phil went through a bunch of dejection, and it was time for him to kind of, win a U.S. Open and really pump, jump up, pump his fist. And like, he was going to really give it up. Like, there's guys that win and they're not that excited. But you knew Phil was just going to give you everything he had. And as far as from a photographer's perspective, that's exactly what you're looking for a frame. And so you're sitting there going, all right, what's it going to look like? And, make sure that you don't miss it. And then all of a sudden he just blows up on 18. I mean, he just blows up. And, this shot is his, after I think is maybe his second shot or something like that. And he put it into the trap and he's looking at it and it's just, he's dejected. And it's just like, you got to be kidding me, Phil. Like, in my head, I was like, I was actually bummed out. I was like, I was looking for that great 18, the crowd, the Winged Foot. It was more people than I've ever seen at a golf tournament. It was just, just thousands of thousands of people, guys, fans coming up 18, and it would have been just incredible. But it doesn't always work.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, you can see his rejection in that photo as much as you can see Mariano Rivera's, what he was going through on his last one. So then Tiger Woods, I mean, Tiger, if you've ever been to a golf tournament and you've followed Tiger Woods, the crowds are insane. So what's it like being in that moment? And does that make your job harder?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I shot a lot of golf, probably not recently, but through Tiger's heydays. I mean, every big tournament, you just follow Tiger. I mean, he was, he didn't even matter who was winning. You would just follow him. And not only do you have the galleries that are just following him, you have, 50 other photographers who are going from tee box to tee box and all trying to, get around, to get a shot. And all you're thinking is about, all you're thinking is like, don't fire in his backswing. Don't fire in his backswing. Because like I've seen it happen. I've seen guys like, you know, when Stevie Williams was his caddy and just screaming at photographers. And it's the most uncomfortable feeling. So I think every time I shot Tiger, it was always about like, don't be that guy. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, because like it was 18 holes, 4 days in a row. And like I said, no matter what tournament, you just followed him. And it was fun, but it was also exhausting. I mean, so just like dealing with the security and the fans and the other photographers and just the mental, like, hey, I don't want to fire in his backswing. And, again, like, but he was Tiger. It was like he made pictures and he made, he was the event, every event, and he showed up. It was Tiger and it was everybody else.
Yeah, there's some great shots. That shot of Pebble Beach right there is amazing.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here and we're in this coronavirus shutdown, and there are no sports. Yeah. What are you doing now? Yeah. Do you have a next passion? What's your next thing?
Well, I get to scan some of those old pictures, so that's what I've been trying to do a little bit, just trying to like go through some of the older stuff. It's like honestly, there's a lot of things I still haven't seen in a long time that have been in a filing cabinet for the last 30 years or so. So you get a chance to maybe look through some old chromes and put them on the side to get scanned. But yeah, like I want to do more. I definitely want to do some more video stuff. I mean, I think that's the obvious answer to a lot of people. Sports photography. I'm 50 years old now. It's a tough job. It's hard. I mean, just physically hard. Your backs and your shoulders carrying gear up and down golf courses or football fields and ski hills, whatever you name it. So yeah, there's things I want to do. I mean, I want to collaborate more. I want to do just interesting projects. I think sports will always be in my blood and do it around sports, but. We'll see. I think about it a lot, and because from just a physical standpoint, I just don't know if I can. And I see guys in their 60s now, 70s, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do it that long. Honestly, it just looks, your knees are breaking down. And, just hard. So I am thinking about it, but even creatively, I think that you do something and you're like, all right. I want to do something else, or I want to do something a little bit different, or work with other people, or work with other kind of, shoot some different stories and whatnot. So yeah, maybe, the life of maybe not professional sports or the big event is, there's an allure there too, to doing some other cool things. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to be shot. There's a lot to see. Well, hopefully sports comes back soon. We can get you back there.
I hope so.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
No, thanks for having me. This is great. Yeah, this is it definitely keeps. It's always fun to look at the old, some old pictures and talk about them. And
I'm sure we can tell.
So yeah, it's great.
I'm sure there's a lot more stories that we could tell because I could be. I mean, we could do this all day because I could tell. I mean, I'm rattling off scores of stuff that you're in. This is really cool. I know. Just so you know, you can follow Rob on Instagram at Rob Tringali on Instagram, and you have a website, robtringali.com. If you want to see more of his work, if you want to reach out to him.
Any reason.
So awesome. Rob, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I took that you took the time that you're here with us and you're telling these stories, and awesome. I can't wait to see more stuff.
Appreciate it. Sounds good.
Right, cool. Thanks, buddy.
We'll talk soon.
Take care. Be safe.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Golf Bag Live, and tell your friends. You can see all past episodes on our channel and follow us on Instagram at The Golf Bag Podcast and on Facebook at The Golf Bag. You can check out the Golf Bag Podcast on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Please take a listen. Until next time, stay safe and happy.